Oh, you're in Michigan.
Yeah, it's about the same as California. You'd never tell. All right, we're live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dallas Winston, Bloody Elbow. I'm honored today to be joined by legendary trainer. I think I can get away with that. John Hackleman of the Pit. Excuse me. John, how are you, man?
Hey, good man. Good, good, good.
Thanks for coming on, man. It's a pleasure. It's not often I have a guest of your caliber. I appreciate your
All
time.
right. Thanks. Love being here.
All right, so most of what I wanted to get into with John is some MMA technique stuff, but because I have him here, I want to dive right into it because there might be, I always try to cater everything that I do to people who are maybe watching MMA for the first time or somewhat familiar all the way to the hardcore guys. So I want to do a little bit of an overview on kind of just you, how you got started, your career, and once we get to today, then we'll launch into the meat and potatoes. Sound all right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right,
Whatever.
so I know a little bit about this. I believe it's your upbringing in Hawaii, but my first question is, tell me about your very first experience with combat sports, martial arts, or fighting, how you got into it, and what attracted you to it.
Well, growing up where I grew up, Honolulu, Hawaii, which is a beautiful place, but it's a rough place. It's not like Haiti or freaking, whatever. I don't know. It's not like a war-torn country, but it's definitely a rough place. There's some rough people in Hawaii, and they like to fight. It's a rough crew. And growing up white there, they're not crazy about, us Howleys there. And I knew that really young, like in grade school. And I always feared going into middle school or intermediate school. I always heard, just horror stories about the white kid going to intermediate school. So I searched on my own and found a martial arts place. I actually found a couple, and caught the bus with my Pan Am bag and checked out a couple and walked into one, 1970. Uh, so I was just 10 years old, and it was called Godin School of Self Defense, and I just knew that's where I was going to stay. It was like 400, 600 square feet, tiny. He had a little office off to the side. There was a little sleeping room with a little cot, and the bathroom was down the hall. And I walked in, and I just knew I was going to train there. Wore black gis, and I stayed there until I grew up and moved out of Hawaii. But I was with him till he passed away in 2001. So I was under him since from then until from 70 to 2010 or 2001, and then so I stayed with him, and he was a eclectic martial art, kaji kempo, which is karate, judo, jiu-jitsu, kempo, and boxing. So it was a mixture of things, and he was a really really rough guy. Spent time in and out of prison, more time in than out, and he had a really tough reputation. Uh, and he was like he's just like a really rough, kind of mean guy, but he really liked me for some reason, and I that's where I learned how to fight and got my got my uh, got my attitude, and that's where it started.
So I assume in retrospect you were extremely fortunate, even though that was kind of still singular martial arts, that it was really eclectic. It was a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
styles of conglomeration. Yeah.
yeah. I know. I was all these things happened. A lot of things like meeting Chuck. Just the way we met. I mean, just things happened. Just all pointed that way. Everything from the time I was 10 until now. I feel lucky that my life went the way it was. It was a rough life, and I had a lot of tough times. But when I look back at it, there's nothing. It all worked out perfect, and I wouldn't change a thing, even though I wish I could change a couple of things right now. But
Don't we all?
no, yeah, no, it was a really good. And Godin was, the kind of guy that I pulled my hamstring when I was like 14 or 13, and instead of just, he goes, you shouldn't be kicking for a while, so he sent me to a local boxing gym. So just box for a little while until your hamstring heals. So the next thing I know, I'm fighting in the Golden Gloves, and then when I got back to Godin's, it added that much more to my game. Then I was doing both, and then that worked out that way, and it all fell into place pretty good, and I became, kind of the tough guy, it's tough being the tough guy because you always got to prove yourself, but that was, kind of a hard thing for me, always having to prove myself that way. But I'll tell you what, it's better than being the little fucking bitch. So I'm okay being the tough guy.
All right, tell me when you first met Chuck Liddell. Tell me that story, how it happened, and when that was roughly.
Early 90s, 92, 93, some. Uh, I just moved from LA where I moved to after the army to pursue a pro career fighting. Um, and then when that started winding down, early 90s, I already become a registered nurse, and so I moved to move the kids away from LA. Just thought I could raise them a little better up this side. So I moved up here and uh, just started training people in my backyard right away, like I did in LA. Um, we called it the Pit, and it was just a little gym I built in the backyard of my house. And then there's some karate guy in San Luis that thought, what I was doing wasn't good for the art, of martial arts, because he thought it was too rowdy and not as respectful, even though we are. And he didn't think my system was very good, and his system could beat my system. It was just an old school dojo war. So I actually said, well, I think, my system is good. He goes, well, you're more of a sport guy in the street, we could always beat you. I go, well, why don't I come to your gym and let's find out. And he goes, yeah, okay, well, come on down this time and this time. And we scheduled it for that Friday. So I put my dad in the pickup truck and we drove down. My dad was living with me at the time. Um, and I walked in and there's this guy sitting behind the desk, the sensei. And I was like, all right, well, let's do this. And he's like, well, I was thinking, and my back isn't really has been bugging me a little, but you're gonna go with one of my students over there. And I said, okay. And I looked, and there was a guy standing there, and he had a mohawk. I was like thinking, who has a mohawk anymore? What? All right, whatever. Okay. So you don't want to do it, so I'm gonna do it with one of your students. Okay. So I went over there, and he started telling me the rules. I go, I thought there weren't any rules. This is gonna be like a street fight. And Chuck, I could tell he was game for it.
So Chuck was Mohawk guy, just to clarify.
Yeah, Chuck was Mohawk guy, and me and Chuck went at it for a little while. And I don't know, you could read that in his book. He exaggerates a little. He said I beat the shit out of him for whatever 15 minutes or something. I don't remember. I think we just sparred pretty damn hard. But I think he just didn't have the proper fighting techniques down. He was a little too traditional, and so anyway, whatever. When we're done, and I think his instructor realized that he was talking out of his ass, I went in the bathroom and I was changing, and Chuck came in and said, hey, can you start training me how to really fight like that? And I said, yeah, sure. I gave him my card. And I remember driving home with my dad and saying, yeah, the guy wants to train with me now, but I don't think he'll show up. And sure enough, 10 o'clock the next morning, because that's when we did classes, Chuck was there, and he'd been there from that day, like 1993, all the way till he retired.
All right, give me the specs on the closed door match. Headgear, gloves, takedowns, full MMA rules. What were the rough guidelines?
I think it was just anything goes, but I think we were wearing these little karate gloves. I didn't have a headgear. I don't. Yeah, he didn't either, because they wore these big like headgears, but I didn't want to wear it. Neither did he. So we just put on little. They kind of reminded me of little fingered gloves, like really small ones. I don't think they were fingerless. They were fingered though, kind of like the old Kung Fu Bruce Lee one.
Yep.
And I just said, "There's no rules. Let's just go." So we just started going.
All on the feet. Any clinch, takedown?
Yeah. There was some clinching. I remember one point he started clinching up, and I started to knee, and his instructor was saying, "Hey, hey, watch the knees." I was like, and I remember still holding on to Chuck saying, "I thought you said this is like a street fight, bro. There's no fucking rules." But I mean, I could tell Chuck was tough, but he didn't have, he was a really tough kid. But this was, I had a little more experience than he did, so I right off the bat, I didn't want to hurt him because it was his fucking instructor that was the big mouth. So we just sparred. I think I basically just showed him, you got something to learn. You're really tough, but you don't have these, I don't know what I was trying to show him without hurting him. If I was going with his instructor, I probably would have just had no mercy on him. But Chuck, he was like, turned out to be just a tough kid, and I didn't want to hurt him, so I just sparred with him. And
All
then,
right, so real quick, I'm trying to get an image, and I don't remember the exact words you said, but that Chuck was pretty still traditional, and from guys that have seen him fight MMA, that's got to come as a little bit as a shock because he brings a very brutal, boxing, street fighting element to it. So, what I
well, our
mean,
our style is traditionally untraditional. We're the most traditional martial arts school around, even though your traditional martial arts schools out there like to put me down and say, "Oh, he's just a thug." They just go in there and fight and beat each other up. They don't have the old school mentality of martial arts. Yeah, we do. We wear gis, we bow, we show respect. You never seen Chuck acting like certain people do right now in the cage. You never seen any of my fighters act like that. They never will act like that. They are martial artists first. If they're not, they will be. I will kick them out of the cage, and they'll never fight again for me. And they all know that. So we're very traditional martial artists, like most guys are now. Laborio at American Top Team, he's a very traditional martial artist, and so are his fighters. They are very respectful and traditional. A lot of guys at Jackson's camps under, Six Gun, the Gibson, the trainer. I mean, he's a traditional martial artist, and he pushes that in his guys too. A lot of the schools do, even AKA, American Kickboxing. They're traditional, they're more traditional to wrestling, which is a martial art, just like karate is. It's still a martial art. The word martial being fighting, art, yeah, wrestling. Boxing is a martial art. So I think all martial artists, including boxers and wrestlers, should have that, martial arts mentality, bushido, respect, whatever you want to call it. Certain fighters aren't really displaying it too well these days, but Chuck always did and always will.
and that's actually cool that that's still important to you because that's the first discussion I have with newer fans or people who aren't that familiar is to the level where they still think it's a couple guys that they drag
Yeah,
off the bar stool, and really
yeah.
this is the same kind of martial arts we thought real fighting was back in the 70s and 80s with Bruce Lee, but the outcome or the way it translates is a little different, but the foundation of honor and respect is still there or should
It's
be.
there just as much as it was. And Bruce Lee was a true MMA fighter. If he was a fighter, he'd be an MMA fighter. He was preaching. I have his book. He's describing left hooks and single leg takedowns in his book back in the 60s. He's talking about interval training, weight training. He's talking about doing cleans, jerks, and snatches way back. I mean, he's talking about keeping your hands up when you throw a hook. I mean, nobody was doing that back then. Just traditional martial artists now, to me, when I hear them thinking they're traditional martial artists, to me it's just you're a terrible fighter. So if you're the worst fighter, you're the most traditional. And that's what they're trying to translate to. And it shouldn't be like the guy down the street from me. I mean, he has this animal system, and I mean, they just do weird stuff that would never work. I mean, in a real fight. And guys like that have never been jumped. Because if you've been jumped in the street, in about the first 3 seconds, that's just not gonna work. You're
Yeah.
not gonna you're not gonna hit someone with a tiger or some kind of beak and
The
stuff. I
old
mean,
eagle beak and ridge hand
it's
aren't
just
the
not gonna
best for
work.
street.
It's not gonna work when some big guy's jumping you. You need to just set your feet in and just dig and just fight. And that's what a martial artist does, a true martial artist. We don't keep our hands in here anymore. We put our hands up because we know when your hands are here, you're gonna get hit with a left hook. Why would you ever put your hand here when you're punching? It means I want to hit me right here, please. That's what it's saying.
Yeah, to look cool
No,
for
I
the
mean,
girls.
I can see when you're doing forms, which I actually love forms, katas. But when you're sparring or when you fight, Nobody's gonna win a fight with his hands down here.
Two quick comments. The first is, despite your opinion on ridge hands and eagle beaks, I'm not going to take down my basic striking points poster. You know what I'm talking
I,
about? The
I had
classic.
I had it forever, and
It's
I didn't. I never said anything about ridge hand. Eagle beak is questionable. Give me a good old ridge hand once in a while.
to the throat. I've taken one of those. That's not comfortable. Damn it! What was the second one? I just said two things and I forgot what the second one was. Man, I felt like it was going to be good too. All right. Well, either way, shit. Um, Tell me now, just like, and I think a lot of people know, but your current role. I mean, you were first known for your work with Chuck, and now you're working with a lot of guys. We covered a little of this, but pit. These are pit elevated guys, right? Berkman, Seiler, McGee,
Yeah,
Clay Collard, Ramsey,
yeah,
and Glover. Of course, you're still working with.
yeah. I work with them, but I don't have time to be not. I mean, time. I don't. I mean, I've been doing this since '74. They know that I don't want to be a full-time trainer anymore. I don't want to travel all over, which I've done way too much of my life. And I love these guys. And if they ever need me, I'll be there. But I just don't want to be that guy. Elevated has a good crew of trainers too. It's Jason Merklich is heading it up over there, and he does a really good job. And I still work with like Court. He'll come here for camp and then go there, and Siler. So um, that's it. My guys here that I don't like when guys call me to come here to train for camp. I just say I don't have a camp. So if you want to come in and work on some stuff, go over stuff, I'll help you out. We'll do some mitts. I'll go over stuff with you, conditioning. Um, but for your camp, should be at a real camp with, the proper training partners, sparring partners, etc. So
And
I'm more of a karate guy. It's not karate, but I consider myself a martial arts karate school, mom and pops, and that's what I do.
Oh, okay. It just came back to me. Sorry, that's the way my brain works. But when you said, about forms and katas, a lot, when MMA first came on, it was a lot of, yeah, like LOL at katas. But I mean, really, when you're hitting the bag and you're going 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, in a way, isn't that kind of this, the same idea? Not that you're going to use it, but to be able to flow back and forth? No?
No, no, because that would be considered drilling. Drilling on the bag, drilling with a partner, drilling combinations you're going to use in a fight. But when people think of katas until you come up with an MMA kata, katas have your hands in weird places, and they're more like dances, and they're not to the same rhythm of a fight, and they don't expose you to or have you practicing functional, practical techniques that you will have to use in a life or death situation or in a sports situation. So that's why katas are fun to watch and they're cute and stuff. But if you're an MMA fighter, you just don't have time, enough hours in the day to do all the things you want to do and do katas for fun. So I would think what you're saying on the bag, 1, 2, 3 hook, uppercut, roundhouse kick, that's drilling. A kata is prearranged movements.
I got you. In functionability and I guess,
Function.
applicability being
Right.
the big
And you can
difference.
make a kata out of all MMA moves if you want to consider it a kata. But to me, I call those drills.
I got you. All right, so it's shocking, how much time you've had in the sport, and you've been able to see MMA, go from nothing up until what it is now. Big picture, just overall, what are your thoughts on the way, it's kind of progressed from, back in the hoist days up until now? Either technique or business-wise, global, what do you think?
Uh, I mean, technique. It's because of people like Gracie, uh, the Gracies, because of them putting their stuff out there, saying, we challenge anyone, any rules. Because of that, and it's kind of gone up and down. The jiu-jitsu guys would always win. Then the striker guys would win for a while, and then more wrestlers would start winning. Then I mean, it kind of went back and forth. To now, it's across the board. And there's no real specialty that dominates anymore. There's knockouts, takedowns, and submissions, um, probably equally across the board. Um, but it's also you have to know it all. A good wrestler will get knocked out if he doesn't learn his striking and striking defense, and a striker will get taken down if he doesn't learn his takedown defense, and both will get submitted if they don't learn some basic submission, counters.
Sure. So the imperative tools were kind of defined, and then it became you have to be somewhat proficient in all those areas, or someone's going to drag you into that area and game over.
Yeah, yeah, we learned that. I mean, I think I started learning that not to the degree of UFC guys, but I started learning that in the 80s when I opened my first gym in my backyard. And when people would say, I'd bring them in and we're going to spar, well, what are the rules? I say, the only rule here is just hit as hard as you want to get hit. So we can go as hard as you want, as light as you want. And there's always the guys that want to come in and tackle you when you start punching them because no one likes getting punched in the face. So we always started working on takedown defense. I learned that it was a very, very important skill to have because no matter how good you punch, and the karate guys out there, there's still guys out there that, in my own neighborhood think I waste so much time on this stupid takedown defense because all they have to do is time it and knock them out coming in. And they actually still believe this to this day. And it's like, I wish that was the case, but unfortunately it's not. So I know how important basic takedown defense is. I don't say you have to be a wrestler, but you have to learn anti-wrestling at least.
Well, and I mean, I assume you agree, but to me, there's two people that revolutionized takedown defense in order of time. Chuck, of course, and then I would put Machida in there. Agree?
I don't think they're the only. I would think Chuck was probably the first well-known one, and I think there's been a lot of other ones besides Machida. But Machida, and they do it in different ways. But yeah,
Drastically different ways, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's the same. Yeah, but it's just necessary, and I think it's a great thing for martial arts instructors like me because we can try stuff, learn, teach stuff, make up stuff, devise stuff, and then give it to our guys, and we have the cage that they can try it out in, and we can say, oh shit, look, our stuff does work. And then our regular martial arts students that I have from 3 to 60 years old, pediatricians to cops and everything in between, they can watch on the pay-per-view or watch my fighters fight or watch a fighter fight and say, hey, we learned that at the gym this week. Shit, look at that. That does work. But in the old days, they couldn't do that unless you went out in the street and practiced your stuff like old Kaja Kempo guys used to do. But we can't do that anymore because you'll either get shot or arrested. So now we can show our students that, look, that left hook I've been teaching you guys this week, look how it knocks people out. Or look, that double leg we've been working on, look, it does take people to the ground. So it's a really good proving grounds for a martial artist, and it's a great way to it's a great way to thin out, to say, no, this doesn't work anymore. Look, so a lot of guys have been exposed, but then even more guys have been, they've learned and they've been, matured in the martial art by finally accepting the fact that shit, I gotta learn the takedown defense, and then the wrestlers say, shit, I gotta learn how to defend, I gotta learn how to block a punch. So I think it's great. I love MMA. I love it. I love it. It's my passion as a martial art more than a sport, but I love it all the way around.
Okay, so going back to takedown defense, to me, one of the biggest differences between Chuck and Machida is that one is much more teachable, being your version with Chuck, where it's pretty hard to teach the Lyoto Machida style. Some of what I'm going to do is selfish because I kind of fancy myself as a fight analyst, so I want to get your thoughts on here. And I learned a ton. I mean, Chuck coming up and following all that, it helped. That was my base of knowledge too. So were some of the keys, my question revolves in the elements you put together to build Chuck's takedown defense. were some of those lowering his level? You know, obviously you don't want to be too upright, but Chuck had a slightly more crouch stance, wider base. Was some of that using his hands much more than the kicks, both for balance and because his hands are right in position to dig an underhook or sprawl out?
Yes and no. Uh, the lowering the stance is always, we have a bunch of takedown. I have priorities of takedown defense, and it is distance, level, and then hips and head. But level is very important because you have to mirror your opponent's level, or you're going to be stuck up here punching air while you're in the air being slammed. Okay, and distance is more important first, and that's Machida uses that one more. Chuck used it too, but it's the distance where you're keeping your opponent at your distance, not his. So yeah, and then the underhooks coming in is not as much. It's more, it would be more his hands are there for punching, because you're not really going to underhook someone that's coming in to take you down, even when you're sprawling. It would be more an overhook.
Yeah, and underhook was a bad example. So here's what I was thinking. I think this came up in a discussion with Carlos Condit. You know, his stand-up is highly dynamic. I love it. You know, a real Muay Thai essence in there. But because he's doing so many different things, it could be a knee, it could be a low round kick, high round kick, you know, high elbow. I always thought someone with just a more traditional boxing stance, that the boxing stance would be more conducive to takedown defense. Is that something you agree with?
I think boxing stance. I think it's um, for me, it's good for takedown. I think boxing stance is terrible for takedown defense. I think that's why so many boxers just get taken down like nothing. I
Well,
think Muay Thai stance and boxing stance are like what you can't use for in any kind of fighting. I don't think.
let's define boxing stance. What would you call Chuck's stance?
Uh, just an MMA stance.
Oh, okay, so we're getting, and that's my fault for terminology. I don't mean traditional boxing, you know, squared off, heavy left front. Absolutely, because
And hands up, and
then
your body's up, and your weight is up high. You're bringing yourself up high and not lower.
and you're hanging your lead leg right out there for a single leg to be snatched up. So totally my fault. Wrong terminology. Let me word it to you this way: a guy who's striking, a guy who mostly uses his hands. And what I'm thinking here is Chuck. You know, not a lot of kicks. It's a little more basic, but still brutal. I
It's 80
assume.
20.
Say again.
We're about 80-20 for strike punches to kicks.
Okay. And was part of that the formula for being able?
Takedown defense.
Excellent. All right, that's kind of what I was looking for. It was
Because
a
we can
sloppy.
kick all day long against another kicker, and then what's he going to do? Kick us back. But once you start kicking against a guy who's taking you down, unless there's only certain times we're allowed to kick when he's in certain positions, and if he's not, he's just gonna take you down. So yeah, we're very sparing with the kicking, especially the back leg.
Okay, so one thing to me is angles. I don't want to say I'm surprised you didn't say
That's a
that,
gay
but
bar in Hawaii.
say again.
That's our favorite gay bar in Hawaii.
What, angles?
Angles, yeah, it's right on Kuhio Avenue. And we go there all the time. Chuck, me, Antonio, angles. So like when I tell my guys work angles, I'll say, don't forget, it's not just a bar in Hawaii.
So Machida, I think, gets more. You know, his angles. Everyone likes to talk about it because they're dramatic. They're beautiful. But I think a really underrated part of Chuck's game was his angles were all really tight pivots in the pocket. Like I want to say for
Randy,
some. Say again.
like Randy when he turned the corner
He
right
had
hand.
to
Yeah,
wait. I did when I was breaking down a fight. He hit that pivot so perfectly. He had his right hand cocked, and he actually had to wait a minute for Randy to figure out where he was and turn in face check. That's what you're talking about, right?
that's what we do for the angle on the right hand. Yeah, um, but yeah, I mean, Machida's is just quick footwork. I mean, it's just he's quicker footwork. Chuck was more subtle, but just as effective. But he was just more subtle. It's the same. It was the same kind of. It was the same kind of movement, but just Chuck was stayed closer to the target all the time. And Machida in and out, in and out.
Yeah, he covers a ton of ground where
Yeah,
Chuck's to me was again more basic, but just as effective. True or false? Those angles never being squared up on your opponent face to face help both with takedown defense, but then obviously you always want to be off center when you're attacking with strikes. Yeah.
correct.
Nice. Okay, so let me change gears, and I don't know if this is going to be easy for you to answer or not, but this is a hypothetical. Give me some examples. If you're with your buddies or whatever and you're watching a high level MMA fight or a high level organization, let's say, give me a couple things that you would note about a fighter that you would say, you can tell this guy doesn't have a lot of experience on the feet. He's got a little more work to do. And then on the flip side, some subtle things right away you can pick up to say, ooh, I can tell that this guy knows his shit.
Uh, I think like with the strikers, like I knew a guy. I'm not gonna mention him, but he blitzed, and our blitz we practice, we drill, we practice, we drill. But in the beginning, until it's ingrained in your muscles, sometimes like you're doing it so good in practice and so good during the fight, unless you get overexcited or tagged. Once you get tagged, the muscle memory comes out, and then whatever's there is there. You don't even think, it's subconscious. So a lot of the guys that aren't true strikers or haven't developed it yet, you can tell when they either get tagged, exhausted, their punches just come out like this. You
And the
know?
head kind of stays retracted back.
Yeah. And their chin is always up. Even though Chuck didn't bring his chin down like as much as I wanted him to ever, and he had tons of experience. It's more the hands and just they don't throw their shoulders and their hips, and it's more arm punching. And to me, I can tell that guy is not a really seasoned puncher. And then when someone does, and they get whacked, and then all of a sudden they come back with really tight stuff, then it looks like they've probably been around a little longer in the striking game.
Don't you think Chuck could get away with that because you could drive a Sherman tank into his chin and he wouldn't even notice?
For a long time, yeah. For most of his career, yeah. That's why, I mean, I used to make him put stuff under his chin, like just paper or like a glove, and he'd have to shadow box like this. He hated it. He'd be so pissed. He'd keep just glaring at me, but he'd have to shadow box like that because chin down, chin down, chin down. I think I've yelled that like 18 million times during training him. Chin down, chin down, chin down. He wanted to put his chin up and just start banging, no matter what. He didn't give a shit. He would even towards the end, when his chin wasn't quite as good, we tried to work on the style a little to do good, like he was doing perfect against Rich Franklin. But then all of a sudden, when he sees, he senses, killer instinct took over all our training, and he would just put his chin up and just start going for the kill, and that's when he started getting tagged towards the end.
Rashad too, right? Same.
Yeah,
Came forward.
he would just because he wanted to go out in a shield. He didn't want to keep. He never wanted to play it safe. Even towards the end, he wouldn't play it safe. I tried to tighten his game up and play it safer towards the end. He didn't want anything to do with it. He just wanted to keep going out banging.
Well,
That's why he struck.
I was going to say, despite the negative side of that, I mean, that's why people love Chuck.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know.
fearless.
But of course, yeah.
Things are just coming to mind here, but before the Franklin fight, I had really, again, breaking down that fight beforehand, that man, Chuck should really do something, throw out something new. And it seemed like he did, right? He shot a couple takedowns, nailed a couple. Was that like a plan beforehand? And was that a kind of a different strategy for him?
Yeah, That's why I wanted him to be safer and a little more conservative, which wasn't in his DNA. But and then we had Sammy Hansen come in, the wrestling superstar, silver medalist, and um, just one of the best wrestlers the country's ever produced. He came in and worked with Chuck, and that was a huge asset to our game. I wish he was still here, but he's coaching wrestling now. Um, he thinks he's at Virginia State or something. I don't know, somewhere. But so and then we were trying to make him a little more conservative. But like I said, neither worked. As soon as he smelled blood, he just started going.
Instinct takes over,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's a fighter.
So another one I'm just making up. I'm curious what I don't know your favorite or what Chuck fight meant the most to you. And for some reason, I'm going to throw this out there. I always don't know why, but this has always been one of my favorite fights of all time. Is when he came back and knocked out Overeem in Pride. For some reason, that was a classic jump off my couch screaming like a cheerleader fight. I'll never forget it. What's yours?
Babalu
Oh yeah, one
won.
right.
Yeah, I don't
That
know
left.
why.
That left. Oh, I mean,
I
highlight.
don't know. I love that fight. We actually made that kick in training. We called it the Babalu kick because in video I saw a certain angle and so we called it the Babalu kick and we just drilled it and drilled it and drilled it and it worked perfect.
Well, and it was an interesting kick too, because an interesting angle with the shin coming up, and wouldn't it also be accounting for if he was in farther, it would land with the knee too? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a takedown. It was like a shin sprawl. He sprawled with his shin.
Yeah, and actually
Yeah.
one of the Russian guys, and I can't remember his name, he knocked someone out in Bellator with that exact same kick, and I
Uh,
remember thinking, I wish there was a I don't know what to call that thing
the
because it's like
Babalu kick.
the
Call it the
Babalu
Babalu
kick.
kick.
I like well, and that was huge, right? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that when the Chuck Tito thing was at a height, and Chuck decided, "Fuck it, I don't want to wait. I'm going to take a fight." And Babalu was extremely dangerous at that
I
time.
know. We were scared about. I was scared of Babalu, yeah, because I love Babalu, man. He had it all, and I was thinking, yeah, shit. All right, all right, all right. So that was one I really was worried about, but Chuck walked right through him.
Babalu fight, man, that's a classic. Um, Another weird one. The way that guard play, and I feel strongly that it's because of the way that judging is handled. You know, basically, if you're the guy on top is winning all day long. But either way, we've seen, and I do agree that a lot of it, kind of what you said before, everyone now is cross training. There's not that deficit in skill. And I think it's easier for a top guy wrestler to learn anti jujitsu and be able to survive. But give me your thoughts on the guard in MMA. Is it a last resort? Is there only super specialists like Aoki, Marcin Held? What's your thoughts on the status of the guard now?
Uh, I think it beats the mount. You know what I mean? I mean, to me, it's a step up from being mounted, a step down from being on top. So I think in order of you know, being in the best position, you mount the guy. Then second, it would be you in his guard. Then third would be him in your guard, and then your worst case scenario would be him mounting you, whether that be front or back.
So your view, if one of your fighters finds himself on his back, sweep, escape, or submit immediately, nothing else?
Number one, it's protect and then escape or sweep. So protect number one, and you can protect a lot better from a guard because you have something that you don't have when you're mounted. It's your hips.
Yeah.
So you have your hips, so you protect first, tie up, underhook, overhook, grab the wrist, and then you can either try to escape first, sweep second, submit third.
Yeah, crazy. So I don't want to have a pity party, but it isn't, knowing the how significant Gracie Jiu-Jitsu specifically, but Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is now submit is one of the last things on the list for guard players.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, true. But there's always jujitsu tournaments. They can go do that on the side.
Another one on a serious note, it seems like a lot of people are now like catch wrestling has become more of a piece of the MMA ground training curriculum. Even like luta livre, I know a lot of the fighters traditionally, like from over in Brazil, are coming up, but that has been something that I've heard more often is just being something else to pull from. I guess any thoughts on like catch, luta livre, any other ground arts besides jujitsu? Or is it all
No, man,
grappling now?
yeah, to me it's grappling. It's all grappling. I think there's three elements of the combats of MMA and four altogether. and I think they're all equal. Conditioning being number one, and then your striking number two, your wrestling number three, which is standing or taking down. So keeping it standing or taking it to the ground wrestling. And then I think number three of that, or number four total, would be the grappling slash submission game. But to me, it's just like, I mean, it'd be like, what's the difference between uh, I don't know, Greco-Roman, or there are more differences. Like catch wrestling, sambo, you know, um, even judo to a big part, even though there's more differences between judo and jiu-jitsu. And jiu-jitsu to me are just, I mean, they would be lumped into submission wrestling, basically. So like sambo is a little more heavy on the leg attacks. I don't know what catch wrestling is more heavy on. And then jiu-jitsu depends on the player, and then to me, judo has some more, they have more simple or more basic submissions, but their game is, they have much more of a stand-up game with the sweeps and the throws, etc. So to me, they're pretty similar.
Talk to me a little bit about like MMA striking now. And I know like when Machida, and this is kind of cliche, when he came on, people started looking at striking based arts, karate maybe based arts that before we thought were laughable, but now it was, ooh, maybe we better rethink this thing. Um, to me, what have been like, I don't want to be as dramatic as say like major evolutions, but what are some changes, I guess, that you've seen in MMA striking over maybe the past 2 decades or so?
Um, People are getting better at it. I don't think there's that many differences. I just think people are getting more proficient, just like the strikers are getting better at the takedowns and takedown defense. Everybody's getting better at submission defense. Some people are working on their submissions. Obviously, guys like Ben Saunders is. Um, but yeah, I don't think there's much difference. I mean, I think one of the biggest examples I have, and there's a couple of them, but the biggest one I have is Dan Henderson. I mean, to me, Dan Henderson is known for his right hand, his right hook. I wish he had a better left hook, but he has such a good right hook, and people feared it, and people feared it so much because he was such a good wrestler. So he had no fear of throwing his right hand. A straight boxer or a straight striker, as opposed to a gay striker, if a straight striker went in and didn't have the takedown defense or the wrestling background that Dan Henderson had, he could never get away with that shit. Because Dan Henderson would just come in and say, "I'm gonna hit you with this fucking overhand right. There's nothing you can do about it," and he'd walk in and do it because of his wrestling background. You know. So and then on the other side of that coin, somebody with such a clean strikes, Kyokushinkai karate, George St. Pierre was so good with his stand-up, he started working on his wrestling, and now he could throw his wrestling in because his stand-up was so good. So there's fighters that start one place, and it makes their other game so much better. But a lot of people, like Mike Castle Williams, he goes in just learning little bits of everything, and they all just come together all at once. And that's the way I think most MMA guys are. They start building from the bottom up.
Learning MMA as a whole as the martial art rather than
Yeah.
individual bits and pieces.
Yeah, guys like guys, and everybody has their favorite thing to do. Like St. Pierre's used to be striking, now it's wrestling. Uh, and then Robbie Lawler, a banger with great takedown defense, kicks really hard too now. So I mean, he has, it's just that evolution. But I think the striking comes, the confidence from striking comes from your ability to avoid takedowns.
So a while back, I think it was, so Machida's, jumping switch kick. John Makdessi came in. We started seeing a lot more hook kicks, spinning hook kicks, even like, some axe kicks here and there. And I started to think, wow, this is going to continue, and we're going to start to see, oh, even a lot of capoeira, like martello kicks and that kind of thing. Do you feel like, and it seems like now that's kind of planed off. Do you feel like that will keep going. We'll still see more, and not necessarily like flashy kung fu movie style stuff, but are there more striking techniques out there that you think we'll start seeing used effectively, more functional techniques that aren't used now?
Yeah, yeah. Wait, Castle's next week. I'm not gonna tell you what it is, but Castle Williams' next knockout. It's gonna be the first of that one in MMA. But I think the sky's the limit, man. And people like Anthony Pettis and Duke Rufus, his trainer, coming up with that crazy shit he does. I mean, it's just gonna go on. It's like you get guys like him, then guys like Saunders with his freaking Uma Plata win. I mean, it's gonna bring it to such a then George St. Pierre and his fucking unbelievable takedowns. You guys got guys like Chuck Liddell who runs backwards and knocks you out while he's moving backwards. And also Anderson Silva does that. But I mean, there's these creative guys are coming in with these great trainers, like the Jackson Camps and the AKA guys, ATT. I mean, they're just coming up. It's like freaking laboratories, and they're coming up with this crazy shit. It's going to be, in the next, 20 years, it's going to be crazy. It's getting, they're getting so good now. It's not even. It's just crazy. They'll knock you out with a head kick or slam you with a suplex.
All right, we're actually getting close, so I'm going to wind it down a little bit. So just a couple weird random questions.
Yeah.
Either one or a couple of your all-time favorite MMA fights.
Huh. My favorite of all time. Nah, if I forget this guy's name, I'm gonna kill my. Clay Collard fought him. He's shit. He's an alpha male guy, trainer, dark hair, looks like half
Justin
Asian.
Buchholz?
Yes, Justin Buckles. Sorry, I forget your name. But the best fight I've ever seen, bar none.
And that's what got Clay into the UFC, right?
Well, no, I don't think so, because that was one. They fought again. That was two, Buckles, Collard. But the first one they fought, that might have got him in, because I remember I sent that video, a link to it, I think to Joe Silva. But it was the best fight I've ever seen, ever. Clay Collard, Justin Buckles. And then any fight with Leonard Garcia. Actually, Leonard Galiza was a famous kickboxer in my day. Leonard Garcia, any fight with him. I don't know. I just love watching fights. I don't know. Freaking Robbie Lawler. Anything with him in it, So yeah, I can't think of a single favorite fight except for the Justin Buckles Clay Collard fight.
In the first one, right?
Number one, yeah. Number two was pretty good too. It didn't live up to the hype though. Like the first one, I just sat there and just like I almost took my shirt and threw it in the towel. There was so much blood. There was buckets of blood.
So there's a theme with everything you've been saying here. In the fights you just mentioned you liked, they have a level of brutality. That doesn't mean it's not martial arts. It doesn't mean the guys aren't respectful, that they don't have good technique, but there's a raw, like, street fighting element to a lot of those fights. It seems like that's a big part of your philosophy, your style.
Anybody's philosophy. If you can be the best jiu-jitsu guy in the world, but if you lay there and try to work your game, there's going to be the jiu-jitsu guys that love it and respect it and appreciate it. I do. But most guys won't. You can have two wrestlers wrestling around trying for position, and most people just walk out of the cage or walk out of the arena. But if you have two guys standing there brawling, everybody is going to be on their feet screaming. It's what everybody wants to see. And you have to know everything. Wrestling's the pivot. You have to know wrestling. That's the pivotal point between the takedown and the stand-up. You have to be good at ground game. You have to be able to then at least defend submissions, but brawling is what people pay to see, And people, your higher-end fans, do respect and appreciate a good, classy ground game, really proficient. But everybody in the world wants to see banging. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's got to be a little bit of both, though, right? Like you can't have a brawler with absolutely no tech. 80-20 kind of, right? You
gotta have it, but if you don't and you're still brawling, nobody gives a shit. That's what people want to see. And the fights I talked about, Collard against buckles. Those guys were good at everything, but they stood there and brawl. Chuck was a friggin' NCAA wrestler and a really good jiu-jitsu guy. And look at him, he loved to brawl. You know, friggin' Hendricks, Johnny Hendricks. I mean, he's a great wrestler. Wasn't he a proficient wrestler? Cormier. You know, all these guys. Cain Velasquez. I mean, these guys love to bang. You know, and they'll bang all day long. But look at them; they're wrestlers. So, I mean, they know. You know, there's a reason college wrestling, you know, didn't get the funds, and there's people don't, you know, pile in to see two guys rolling around. They will pile in to see banging.
Absolutely. All right, let's.
But you're a better banger if you can defend the takedown.
Yeah, sure. And I think a lot of times brawling gets confused with a lack of skill or a lack of technique, and that's really not the case. It's more of a mentality of applying what you know in brutal fashion. Yeah.
Yeah, and its styles make fight, and sometimes that's the only way you can win, or that's the best way to win, or whatever.
All right, that's almost exactly an hour. I want to take it easy on you, so maybe you'll come back and see me again sometime.
All right.
Let's wrap it up, though. I know you have a new, maybe it's not new, but the Pit Online Dojo where you're offering
Yeah.
some instructionals. Tell me about that. Plug all your stuff.
Yeah, the pitonlinedojo.com is going to be. It's just so many people want to train. They love the pit. They love Chuck, Glover, Court. I mean, they love the pit experience, and we are a family. We call that Ohana in Hawaiian. Um, and we're a really family. We're a close-knit gym, and we're a close-knit group, and we're traditional, non-traditional martial artists. Our stuff works in the cage, in the ring, in the street. And there's so many people that can't get our stuff. You know, they live wherever. So I started an online dojo, and it's gonna you sign up for membership, which I don't think I'm gonna make a lot of money at because it's just routinely people don't notoriously make a lot doing that. But I want everybody to be exposed to the pit. So I sunk a little bit of money in, made this site, and got together with a really group of good guys that do this. Dan Vogella, he makes the sites. He's also a little jiu-jitsu guy that's one of the best little guys out there, and he happens to be a web guy. And it's just so guys can come and join the family. I mean, I do weekly chats where I talk to people, and I tell everyone. I mean, all my guys can contact me however they want because I want it to be an open door policy. I want everybody to reach whatever goals they want, whether it's a black belt or Chuck Liddell status. So it's called the Pit Online Dojo.
And are you on Twitter? You got a Twitter handle?
Yeah, yeah. Pit_master.
Pit_master. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. I'm going to let John go. John, any final words, comments, complaints, questions?
Don't let anyone take your lunch money, ever.
And if you do, the pitonlinedojo.com.
That's it, brother. All right, thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Bye bye.